So, already this early into spring, we have gotten some interesting comments from Nick Saban regarding multiple different things, regarding the defense, regarding Bryce Young, regarding Bill O'Brien. But the one I want to focus on is actually what just came out the other day when he was talking to coaches, and that is about the evolution of defense within college football, because I think he makes some interesting points and we need to get into it. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. So hop down to the comments and give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you agree with what Coach Saban had to say about defense just being fundamentally different from how it used to be? And let me know what you're thinking on that. And if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification because I do constant college football content. Play reviews, film analysis, talk style videos like this, and I'm on my push to 5,000 subscribers. And if you did enjoy this content, be sure to like and comment down below. But with all of that being said, let's talk about what Nick Saban said. And he pointed out the fact that the Alabama Crimson Tide were number one in the SEC in points allowed, and to them, it was still not a banner defensive year. And that could be interpreted one of two ways. Either A, the Crimson Tide defense has broken down and it's just not as good, or B, the effect of college football has changed the way defenses have to operate in order to be successful, and the rules are so predicated to that of the offensive game that defenses are going to kind of naturally be lagging behind, and it is absolutely the latter. And let me explain why. To kind of fully get the scope of the weight of this statement, we have to understand Nick Saban and the history of Nick Saban. And this was an individual who, when he first got his start to coaching, was bashing heads with head coaches and defensive coordinators over his vision of how his secondary should be ran. You got to remember, at the time when he was coming into coaching, big lumbering safeties were the absolute move, and Saban saw the writing on the wall. He knew that the passing game was going to become more proficient, and because of that, he wanted to go to smaller defensive backs and safeties who were better in coverage. Well, his system worked out for that era, but now college football has completely taken what Saban already interpreted and ran with it. The passing game that Saban had kind of pictured was the passing game of old to us at this point. The college football offensive revolution has seen many different faces in many different systems. And regardless of where you are, there has to be massive adaptation. And I love what Nick said about how whenever they realized that this change needed to be made, they kind of had to bring in Lane Kiffin, because right now you're at this juxtaposition where you have a good offense, not a great offense, and you have a pretty good defense, but pretty good defenses aren't getting it done against great offenses. That's just, college football is moving in a different direction, and the RPO and the pace is absolutely killing it. Specifically, the RPO attacks the cover 3 defense, which was a just almost a base defense when you were talking about which scheme teams were running outside of nickel 4-3-3-4s. Cover 3 was a defensive formation that was called incredibly frequently, and the RPO attacked it to the point of you can line up in a cover 3 if you want, but if they're calling an RPO, good luck to you. You have to have some major modifications within that cover 3 to be able to guard against probably the most successful scheme in college right now, which is the RPO. And you can see many different variations of the RPO offense. You have Lane Kiffin, who does a very flashy variation. Then Alabama had a Brian DeBall, and then you had a Mike Loxley, and then you had a Steve Sarkisian, whose issuance of the spread is much closer to Lane Kiffin's, but the philosophy is a little bit different. Lane is a little bit more flashy, where Sark is a little bit more reserved in their approach. Both are going to kind of appear to do some flashy things, but Sark kind of has this air of simplicity as the key to brilliance. I bring all of this up in this offensive revolutionary tree line at Alabama because that, to me, is what makes Nick Saban so great. The fact that he has so many rings makes him undeniable. The fact that he has made so many guys successful in college and then carry that success on to the NFL, that's undeniable. But to me, what separates Saban ultimately at the end of the day from everybody else is his ability to recognize what he is best at, what his calling card is no longer the way college football is being ran. And instead of trying to fight it and letting his macho and machismo kind of take the way and just get left behind, he adapted and he overcame. And that's a really, really interesting thing when you look at the type of person he is with the success he has had and the type of coach he is respected as. I mean, when you're a defensive guy that has basically revolutionized how DBs are playing, you'd think he'd be much more hell-bent when fighting, switching over to a more spread offense. And maybe he was. But he certainly switched it over in time, because the Alabama Crimson Tide now, while fielding a vaunted defense, has an incredible offense, and that doesn't look to change. And the thing I love the most, and the reason why I bring all of this up about Lane Kiffin coming, is because Lane had to establish a system that was current. And when Lane did that, Saban started taking notes. And now when we listen to the press conferences, we hear Saban saying, "We are going to run our system," and Bill O'Brien is going to come in and implement new wrinkles within the system. But it will be our system. And one of the things I've really loved him talking about is the implementation and the use of the running backs this year, because Alabama has got a ton of running backs that they have got to get involved in the game. And Saban has been very cognizant of this, and that's something that makes me very, very at ease to hear. Saban is great for multiple reasons. That much is undeniable, but probably the greatest of them all. More so than the rings, because that's incredible, that's undeniable, but we have to ask ourselves, how was he able to get to those many rings? And the answer, aside from having great players, which he always admits to, there's an incredible book where one of the opening lines is him talking about how he is nothing without his players. So Saban is incredibly cognizant of this. Aside from him being an incredible recruiter, the fact that he's willing to adapt is what makes Saban so great. The fact that he is known as a defensive guru who recognized the modern era of college football and brought in guys such as Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin to teach him how to revolutionize his offensive system to match the times, how to recruit these guys and spot them that are going to fit within this system. And because of that, that's what makes Saban so great. And it's so interesting what he says about the defense changing, because he's right on. Alabama can have a pretty good defense this coming year, but that doesn't mean it will be like the defenses of old. We need to understand that right now, if you want to have a super effective defense, look for a very opportunistic defense with great pass rush and great cornerbacks, because right now the ability to take the ball away is as big as it's ever been. And I know that sounds like a nothing statement, because turnovers have always been huge, but interceptions right now are unbelievably valuable. And defenses that can create turnovers are defenses that are going to be hyper effective, because the name of the game right now is offense. And any way your defense can get the ball back to your offense is a defense that is going to be incredibly effective. And we need to remember that the defense might not look the same anymore, but the way we measure its effectiveness might also have to modify. I can't wait to hear what y'all are thinking, because I couldn't agree more with what Saban said. The times have changed. The defenses of old that are just allowing 6 points a game, that's not the way it happens anymore, because the offensive rules are far too geared towards offense, right? That's why there are so many offensive rules that benefit the offensive side of the ball, because touchdowns makes views, and things as simple as the cover-ups within RPOs allowing linemen downfield at 3 yards makes it almost impossible for a defense to know what's up, and in that regard makes it almost impossible for them to be able to hold a team to the standards of old. And I think we need to kind of modify how we evaluate an effective defense, and pass rush is going to be an incredibly important one. And Alabama fans, my goodness, you'll know I am as high as anyone could be on Will Anderson, making the video on him right after the Missouri game, talking about how he was about to take over the SEC. But I cannot wait to see what y'all are thinking. Hop down to the comments and let me know. That's it. See ya.